भारत ने जो कदम उठाए,
India or Bharat? At the recent G20 Summit, Prime Minister Modi caused some controversy when he used the name Bharat instead of India.
India, that is Bharat, is our identity. India and Bharat have always been interchangeably used.
In this episode of Insight, we delve into what's behind the name.
The entire world knows us as India. It's not that the world knows us as Bharat.
How does the name Bharat tie into the government's decolonisation project?
India was a name which has that baggage, whereas Bharat is the more traditional, culturally soaked name of our nation.
And could it become another fault line in Indian society?
It is creating us versus them, because Bharat is supposed to be the real indigenous Indian, and India is supposed to be people like you and me who talk in English, etc.
"40 years ago, Kirti Azad and his teammates made history. Despite being considered underdogs, the Indian cricket team hoisted the World Cup trophy at the end of the 1983 contest.
So nobody gave us a chance, and we also thought, what the hell is going on? And here we play the mighty West Indies, I think all-time best one-day team in the world. Arguably, I suppose everybody will accept. And we defeat them in the very first game. And there we are, pinching ourselves. Oh, have we really won it?
Since then, India has gone from strength to strength in the International Cricket Council, or ICC.
Now, India is one of them who calls the shots in the ICC. Commercialization came, ESPN came in 1993 after World Cup victory. So we are the pioneers to get India to where it is now.
Mirroring its rise in the ranks of cricket, India too is now a giant on the global stage. In September, the country made history again by hosting its first ever G20 Summit, an annual meeting of the world's largest economies. And with world leaders and global media watching, Prime Minister Narendra Modi caused a stir when he unveiled his meeting placard. Instead of India, it read Bharat.
So G20 was ultimately a very big platform, and I think it was where the world noticed greater usage of the word Bharat as opposed to the more colloquial word India. And I think that is what caught eyeballs, and a lot of people started questioning, is it that India is formally announcing a change of name to Bharat?
Headlines around the world speculated if the country itself is headed for a name change. For many outside India, it was the first time they've heard the name. But for those in India, Bharat has been widely used as an alternative appellation.
Where a lot of commentators misunderstood is that India has always been Bharat.
If it suited you to call Bharat, your country Bharat, you called it Bharat. If it suited you, call it Hindustan. Sare jahan se acha Hindustan hamara is sung by every child. The Japanese don't call their country Japan. They will call it Nippon or Nihon or whatever. So why is there such a big issue being made?
So, what's in a name? Was it much ado about nothing? To answer this, we must first understand the origins of the names Bharat and India.
Now, for ancient civilizations like ours, which go back to the dawn of time, there are often more than one name by which the entire civilizational map, which later became a young nation, is known. India was known in different forms based on the river Sindhu. The Chinese called it Shentu, from Sindhu. You also have the Persians, who as far back as then referred to this geographical subcontinent as Hindu.
The name Bharat, on the other hand, is associated with the legendary King Bharata. The name appears in the epic Mahabharata. The lands he ruled were known as Bharat.
The Mahabharata, which is around 5th century BCE, which has one particular Sanskrit shlok which says that all the land north of the oceans and south of the snowy mountains is Bharat Varsham.
Because the names were used interchangeably for centuries, a decision had to be made on the country's name when India gained independence in 1947.
Meanwhile, in Delhi, the stage was set for British rule to give place to the new dominion of India.
As the constitution was drafted by Dr. Ambedkar's committee, there were debates over which name should be used. Subhash Kashyap, one of India's foremost constitutional scholars, remembers the discussions then.
The arguments given in favor of India were that throughout the world now, India is known as India. India was a founding member of the United Nations. Those favoring Bharat is the ancient name and goes back to the Vedic times and Shastras. It has always been for thousands of years known as Bharat.
In the end, a compromise was struck and both names were used. In Article 1 of the Constitution, what is written is this: India, that is Bharat.
The understanding being that in English you will call it India and in Hindi you can call it Bharat.
Both the words Bharat and India are equally valid. In the English edition of the Constitution,
But on the international stage, India was the choice appellation. So when Bharat appeared on G20 official documents, it drew criticism from the opposition.
हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी हेडलाइंस मीडिया में हेडलाइंस बनाने में ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टेड रहते हैं. भारत भी है, इंडिया भी है.
For the supporters of Modi and the BJP, the argument is that Bharat, with its ties to ancient Hindu civilizations, is an attempt to break away from India's colonial past.
It is true that India was a name which over a period of time has largely been used by the European travelers and colonialists. So it has that baggage, whereas Bharat is the more traditional, culturally soaked name of our nation.
For over 400 years, what is now modern India was under foreign rule. In 1526, Babur, a chieftain from what is today Uzbekistan, swept down the plains of North India and established the Mughal Empire. By the 1700s, the Mughals had sovereignty over most of the subcontinent. But soon, another power gained ascendancy. The British, in the form of the East India Company, defeated the Nawab of Bengal in the Battle of Plassey in 1757. By 1858, the British would have dominion, continued to refer to their new colony as India. The British rule would be a traumatic period for the subcontinent.
When the British come, let's say at the beginning of the 18th century, year 1700, India produced 25% of the world's GDP, 8 times that of the United Kingdom. What colonialism does is interrupts this. It breaks the organic growth of Indian civilization. Economically, it was disastrous. From 25% at the beginning of British rule, we came to less than 5% by the time the British left. We became a country where there was a famine every year And by the time the British left, 3 million people died in Bengal of just one region of famine, of poverty. So colonialism devastated our society economically, politically, culturally, socially, in every conceivable way.
All in all, Indians and their confidence had been systematically eroded, and a lot of thinkers around the world have studied this phenomena, and they call it that Indian minds have been colonized permanently.
Since his election 9 years ago, Prime Minister Modi has made his mission to distance India and Indians from their colonial past, or what he has repeatedly called the slavery mindset.
Every Indian is proud to be Indian and Bharati. The slave mentality was a mentality of certain members of the opposition or certain political parties to hang on to the colonial heritage.
Like Shergill, other members of the BJP supported the use of Bharat. The Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, Pushkar Singh Dhami, tweeted a photo of the G20 dinner invitation, calling it a blow to the slavery mentality. But history is complicated, and some, like historian Aditya Mukherjee, disagree that the name India should be weighed down by the anchor of colonialism.
How is it tied to colonialism? India has emerged by fighting against colonialism. The modern nation was imagined as India. They are saying that in the ancient times we were called Bharat. There is no evidence. What ancient time? How far will you go back? So did India have many empires. Some covered most of the territory of India, some covered a little part of it, and so on and so forth. Why are they so keen to remove the name of India?
Nonetheless, the decolonisation project is in full swing under Prime Minister Modi, and it is changing the streets of New Delhi. New Delhi is changing. On September 19, members of Parliament bid farewell to the old Parliament built by the British in the 1920s. The lawmakers moved to the pristine chambers next door, India's new Parliament building.
Under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji's government, there is a conscious effort by intent, action and policy to discard the colonial mindset, colonial hangover, the colonial stamp on our monuments, and take pride on our Indian heritage or the Bharatiya heritage. And I think the new Parliament building is symbolic or emblematic of that.
The design of the building, too, reflects this projection of strength, as architect Madhav Raman explains.
The original old Parliament was a circular building. So what that does is, when you approach it, you do actually see it receding in its volume. You don't get to see a full face of it. Whereas the new Parliament is a very hard triangular building. It doesn't curve away from the viewer's eye. And that kind of increases the perception of volume, might, strength, weight of the building. So that's one aspect. I think the other aspect that has come into discussion is the mounting of the 3 lions on top of the Parliament. And in many ways, I think the design does achieve, a goal of grandeur. That's quite clearly one of the motivations behind this new building.
Parliament's new home is part of Prime Minister Modi's revamp of India's capital. A plan known as the Central Vista Redevelopment Project, which comes with a hefty $2 billion price tag. The government wants to rebuild a 3-kilometer stretch of New Delhi that starts from the Presidential Palace and ends at the India Gate. An avenue once known as the King's Way, then Rajpath, and now Kartavya Path, or Path of Duty. This area was originally built by the British to serve as their seat of power during the colonial era.
You have to remember that Indians were not really expected to walk around these streets. It was purely European area. This was really the sort of the evidence that Indians were loyal subjects of the British Crown. So the road that connects the two was called Kingsway. And the road that intersected it, that almost showcased the spoils of colonial rule, right? The Imperial Record, the Oriental Institute, the Imperial Museum and the Imperial Library. These four collected at the intersection of Kingsway and Queensway. Now, on independence, the names were changed. So Kingsway became Rajpath. Queensway changed to Janpath. Now that was a significantly more democratic name. It's People's Way.
The Central Vista redevelopment project is touted by the Modi government as an assertion of Indian cultural identity, a casting off of the yoke of colonialism. Some see the name Bharat as a part of this decolonization process.
So a lot of our cities carry those burdens of history. Those names, those cities are getting new names. A lot of these are historical cities, like Allahabad. That name has been changed to its real name, historical name of Prayag. Therefore, the Rajpath area where the viceroys used to stay and move around, that name has been changed to something that we can relate much more with. It's the Kartavya Path now, calling in collectively Indians coming in and contributing to nation building.
And as a clear symbol of this is the statue of Subhas Chandra Bose, an 8.5-meter tall monument to the Indian hero venerated for his fight for independence. The statue was unveiled to much pomp and pageantry in September last year. Significantly, where it stands was once occupied by the effigy of English monarch King George V.
King George's statue was removed almost immediately after independence. There was a vacuum left behind. I think that vacuum had significance. Now, why was it empty? Because there was an evacuation of colonial power. There was a removal of a colonial power.
We are seeing that there is a systematic approach around which all the cultural artifacts are being gradually removed and replaced by things that we Indians are proud of. What we are seeing is that this new India is a much more confident India. It takes pride in its cultural roots.
This physical expression of India's ancient heritage comes at a time of surging nationalism. In one survey by the think tank Stimson Center, 9 in 10 respondents agreed that India is a better country than most other countries. This coincides with a period of strong economic growth in the country.
The Indians of today's India is much more confident. We as a nation are young, energetic, and much more confident. This is the reason why we take genuine pride when we refer to India as Bharat.
India was the fastest growing major economy in 2022, with a GDP expansion exceeding 7%. It is poised to retain that title this year. The country has historically suffered from a brain drain. But with the boom, there are signs of a reversal. Some educated young Indians, like startup enthusiast Rahul Mukherjee, are choosing to return home after their studies abroad.
In the summer of 2014, I decided to go to the UK to do my master's. I was in De Montfort University in Leicester, and I enrolled in a 2-year course for an MBA over there. So eventually, around the March or April of 2016, I decided to come back into India. As I was seeing that there's a lot of opportunity in the country, and India has a bustling startup environment.
Today, Rahul is part of a company that makes and sells feminine hygiene products. From their base in Delhi, he wants to change the perception that made in India products are of poor quality.
So we are sourcing the finest raw materials from the best parts of the world, and we are assembling it in our country, and we are using technology for the first time in feminine hygiene and personal care, and we are redoing things which were never done before. A lot of my friends, or too, after having worked for a year or two in the US as well in the UK, have now decided to come back and add to the growth story, as they can see potential in various sectors.
Despite its stellar economic performance, India still faces many challenges. About 10%, or 145 million people, live below the World Bank's poverty line.
We are happy that India is the fastest growing economy in the world, and new opportunities are coming up, and credit must be given to the government for that. But at the same time, you still have the largest number of the unacceptably poor. You still have the largest number of people who can't read or write. You still have far too many malnutrition children. So, it's not a problem that can be solved by a magic wand, but a more equal society should be also our goal.
Another stark area of inequality is in opportunities for women. According to the World Bank, women's labor force participation actually fell in the years between 2000 and 2019. It only began ticking upwards recently. This gave 25-year-old Nikita Paracha some pause after she finished her MBA in the UK. Model Nikita, who also works with Rahul in High Life, has launched a startup on her own.
When I came back from UK, I didn't want to do any job. I was like, I want to open something of my own. And that's when I met my childhood friend, and she was also thinking about opening something. So together we opened a hamper business where, for 2-3 months we really didn't know what we were doing.
Her company customizes and packs hampers for clients. Despite some initial struggles, after 2 years, business is picking up.
Right now we have a wedding order where we have to deliver 180 boxes. That's the biggest order we have right now. So we are all working for that. India is actually a growing, it's a growing country right now. So, you have more opportunities in India than UK, because UK is kind of already, developed.
I think everyone has realized the kind of potential our country has and what we can achieve. And I think that sense of pride is coming back.
In 2022, India became the 5th largest economy in the world. There is perhaps some poetry in how it achieved this, by overtaking its former imperial power, the UK, to claim the spot. Meanwhile, the reimagining of India's colonial past continues. As part of the Central Vista redevelopment project, more British-era buildings are set to be refurbished.
The secret of colonial rule is not your physical subjugation. It is the colonization of your mind. So I'm not against reclamation of our culture from the influences of colonialism. But every act cannot be seen from that prism.
So they've demolished a museum, which is the Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts, IGNCA. They're going to be demolishing the National Museum as well as the annex to the National Archives. I remember visiting the National Museum as part of, when my school used to send us there by the bus loads, and then pouring out onto those lawns and enjoying ice cream. So changing the name, there's no problem. But demolishing buildings is something that should be thought through very, very carefully, because you are actually removing memory. And these are not necessarily memories that belong to colonials. These are memories that were built around these spaces over the past 75 years as well, of residents of these cities, visiting citizens of India who have seen this imagery coming at them, these museums they have visited, all these buildings that are being torn down have various significances.
And there is concern that the decolonization process is Hindu-centric. It is Hindu iconography that replaces British-era constructs. Minority cultures are left unrepresented. A criticism that has also been leveled on the name Bharat. Place names have always had political connotations in India. For decades, state governments have been renaming colonial-era cities, stressing on the Indian heritage. In 1995, Bombay was renamed Mumbai. Later, Madras became Chennai, Calcutta, Kolkata, and Bangalore, Bengaluru. But it isn't just the legacy of the British Raj that has been altered. The renaming project extended to reminders of when India was ruled by the Muslim Mughal Empire. Aurangzeb Road in Delhi, named after a Mughal emperor, was renamed Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Road in 2015. And there are other examples.
The kind of changing of names we are witnessing in India is the dangerous kind, where all Muslim names are to be removed. Railway station called Mughal Sarai, known for, since the railways were built virtually, the name has been changed. A city, Allahabad, which every Allahabadi has called Allahabad, the name has been changed because Allah word comes in it. It is not only leading to polarization, it is done precisely to create polarization.
Hindus make up 80% of the population in India, and Muslims 14%. Several high-profile incidences have raised concerns about religious polarization in India. Since coming to power in 2014, the BJP has started building the Ram Temple in Ayodhya. The temple construction began after India's Supreme Court said the Hindus have the right to build a temple in a disputed site where a mosque was demolished by Hindu zealots more than 3 decades ago. The dispute in the Hindu holy city of Ayodhya, considered by devout Hindus to be the birthplace of their god Rama, had led to the worst communal conflagration in the nation's modern history. In 2019, the BJP government revoked the special status or autonomy granted under Article 370 of the Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir. The state was India's only Muslim-majority state. The government's move led to communal divisions in the country. Just this year in August, communal violence left 4 dead in the Haryana state. Gohar Raza is a Muslim poet and scientist. He has observed recent moves by Hindu nationalist groups like the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or RSS to accuse Muslims of not being patriotic enough.
The 10 years, they have been saying that you don't sing national anthem, you don't stand up. Muslims do stand up on national anthem, but they beat up people. So the Muslim community in India, because it fits into the hate agenda of RSS, is being forced every time to advance their political agenda. But Muslims have not reacted to this at all. There is no statement by any of Muslim leaders on this controversy.
Flashpoints with other minority groups have also made headlines recently. The Khalistan movement is a Sikh separatist group in Punjab, active in the 70s and 80s. It reared its head in Canada recently over a killed activist, sending the two countries' bilateral relations to rock bottom. Earlier this year, Khalistan supporters clashed with the authorities. Critics are quick to lay the blame of communal tensions at the feet of the ruling BJP and supposed Hindu agenda.
कि बीजेपी माननीय मोदी जी के एरा में पोलराइजेशन एक बड़ा फैक्टर करते हैं। ये फैक्ट है। किसी न किसी तरह से आप देखें मीडिया में बीजेपी के नेताओं के द्वारा और हेट स्पीच में सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक को बोलना पड़ा कि हेट स्पीच पे कार्रवाई करिए, ये बर्दाश्त नहीं है, ये सारी चीज़ों को तो पोलराइज करने का तो ये प्रयास करते हैं कि
रूटेड मच in our history, much before we got independence. This was a project run by Britishers, and therefore I always say they are following the path of British divide and rule policy. Of course, yes, there is a divide in the country, and that is being taken off as political advantage for consolidating the anti-Muslim vote in the country by RSS and BJP. They have succeeded, and they don't know any other way of succeeding, in fact.
If you create communal disharmony, it will create endemic social instability, which is not good for what should be our foremost priority, economic development. So this is a country where we must respect all faiths and learn to live together.
The BJP has always refuted the claims that they seek to divide. Nonetheless, against this backdrop, there were concerns that pushing the name Bharat with its perception of Hindu nationalism and nativism could create another fault line. After all, it is favoured among right-wing groups like the United Hindu Front.
It is creating us versus them. It is basically an attack on what they call the urban Naxal, the intellectuals, the English speaking, because Bharat is supposed to be the real indigenous Indian, and India is supposed to be people like you and me who talk in English, etc. Now this is trying to create a divide, which is totally unnecessary. What is the need? Who has said that don't use Bharat? In fact, by doing this, you are pushing people not to use Bharat. You will be in parts of the country where it is not in currency, in some parts of the south, for example, they will make it a point not to use Bharat. Now, why do you want to do that?
But yet, others disagree that Bharat is instead a unifying title.
Please do a poll. Which Indian does not take a pride in saying Bharat? Every soldier which is on the Indian army is the most apolitical organization where a Hindu and Sikh, Muslim, Christian stand together and protect the Indian borders, and in one breath they say Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Is that polarization? Those critics who relate the name Bharat to any particular Hindu nationalism or form of religious nationalism either do not know India, or either do not know its history, or either do not know how the words both India and Bharat came into existence.
And for the supporters of BJP, like Subhas Agarwal, he says his Hindu faith is an inclusive one. Subhas is the founder of one of India's largest finance companies with more than 600 offices.
वो पोलराइजिंग सनातन धर्म कीड़ा है, सनातन धर्म बीमारी है, इस तरह की बातें कर रहे हैं। वो इतना पोलराइजिंग कर रहे हैं कि पूछो मत, दूसरी मुस्लिम्स को और दूसरी कास्ट को। तो आप कह सकते हो ये पोलराइजिंग इन्होंने हिंदू को कर दिया है, तो वो उसको पोलराइजिंग भी कह सकते हो, अवेयरनेस भी कह सकते हो, क्योंकि हिंदू कभी भेदभाव नहीं करता था। कभी हमारे विचारों में सब एक हैं। हम किसी चीज़ को हम किसी दूसरे धर्म को अनादर नहीं करते। हमारे यहाँ तो रोज़ लोग हमारे धर्म को तो लोग कुछ भी कह देते हैं, सब लोग इतना तक बोल देते हैं। तो ये हमारी सहन शक्ति है और हमारा शांतपना है। हमारे धर्म में इस तरह सिखाया गया है कि किसी धर्म का अनादर मत करो।
For BJP government, only one form of nationalism exists, that is love for the nation, irrespective of religion, caste, creed. Are we saying this Bharatiya Reserve Bank or the Constitution of India, the frame of the Constitution, when they wanted to inserted the word Bharat, India is Bharat, they were promoting any form of religion? So for India, that is Bharat. There is only one form of nationalism, which is a love for the nation, and not irrespective of caste, creed and religion across the spectrum.
And a Pew study done last year suggests that polarization may be overstated. About 9 in 10 Indians agree that they are free to practice their faiths. And across all religions, roughly 8 in 10 say respecting others is an important part of being Indian.
Polarization is a different debate from the name change debate. There is no name change, I'm repeating this. The debate around whether this country is a more polarized country or a less polarized country, we need to go by hard numbers. One of the biggest proxy numbers to measure that is the National Crime Records Bureau of our country. If you look at the number of religious riots that happen, violence that happens, look at those numbers compared with the numbers 10 years back. You'd be surprised to know that year over year we have seen reduction in the number of communal riots in the country. You would want to cherry pick a few anecdotes here and there and build a bigger story out of it, then that's doing injustice to raw data.
But there is one more dimension to consider: the upcoming general elections, due in about 6 months. Is the excitement over Bharat simply a campaigning ploy? Saharanpur, 200 kilometers north of Delhi. It looks a place far removed from the hustle and bustle of the capital. 48-year-old Kalyan Singh is a relatively rich farmer in Buda Khera Guja village in Saharanpur. Kalyan owns 125 acres, including a mango orchard. He also cultivates rice, wheat, and sugarcane. Like other villages, Kalyan is unmoved by the name change controversy raging in the capital.
देखिए, इंडिया भारत का मैं भी सुनता हूँ, सोशल मीडिया से भी सुनता हूँ, समाचार से भी सुनता हूँ। इंडिया भारत, भारत भी इंडिया है और हिंदुस्तान भी इंडिया है और इंडिया इंडिया ही है। ये तो सत्ता पक्ष के लोगों का या इसका बरगलाने का मामला है। अभी बीजेपी लोग पहले कुछ दिन पहले अभी से ये कह रहे थे कि न्यू इंडिया, मेकिंग इंडिया, फलाना इंडिया, उस तरीके से ये कह रहे थे। अब वो इंडिया तो इंडिया ही है, उससे हमें क्या लाभ है? नो बताओ। मान लिया मेरे बच्चों को क्या लाभ मिलेगा? मेरा बच्चा बीटेक कर लिया, अगर मेरे बच्चों को या मुझे तो जब लाभ मिलेगा जब उसे सर्विस और नौकरी और पैसा मेरे घर में होगा तो मुझे लाभ मिलेगा उस चीज़ से। मुझे उन चीज़ों से क्या लाभ है?
Instead, Kalyan's concerns are more prosaic.
देखिए, अगर जो खर्चे हैं ना हमारे, वो दिन पर दिन हमारे इस तरीके से बढ़ते जा रहे हैं, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ जैसे आपने हमारे रेट की बात है, कोई भी चीज़ है, हम कहीं बाज़ार से लेने जा रहे हैं, सब्ज़ी लेने जा रहे हैं तो महंगी, मान लिया कोई अगर दाल लेने जा रहे हैं तो महंगा, पेट्रोल डीजल के दिन पर दिन रोज़ की रोज़ रेट बढ़ते, शाम को कुछ है, सुबह कुछ हो रहा है। तो इस तरीके से हमारी महंगाई में कमर तोड़ गई। देखिए, भारत और इंडिया जैसा कि आज की तारीख में चल रहा है सब जगह, तो इससे हमें कोई लाभ नहीं है।
The opposition believes it is a BJP ploy to distract attention from the nation's real problems.
These are basically things to divert attention of people from unemployment, from the price rise.
पब्लिक को बेहतर गवर्नमेंट चाहिए, पब्लिक को एक बेहतर रिजल्ट चाहिए, हमारी इकोनॉमी बेहतर चाहिए। इतना कर्जा लेते जा रहे हैं मोदी जी की हुकूमत में आने के बाद, उस समस्या से कैसे निपटेंगे? तो इन सब चीज़ों से ध्यान हटता रहे तो नॉन इशूज़ को इशूज़ बनाने का प्रयास करते हैं, लेकिन वो 2-3 दिन से ज़्यादा बन नहीं पाता।
On the other side, the BJP accuses the opposition of using the name change to stir the pot.
The entire controversy that the government is deliberately pushing for the name change of the nation is a controversy created by the opposition out of sheer political paranoia, nervousness, out of sheer panic. The first article of our constitution is name of our union, name of our territory, which says India that is Bharat. So India that is Bharat is our identity. The point is, it is the opposition which is issueless, agendaless, has got addicted, like sharks are addicted to blood. Opposition has got addicted to creating controversies out of thin air to gather some 2 minutes of fame or headline.
As the political temperature rises in the capital, the opposition has put up a joint front against the BJP. In July, the opposition parties formed the Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance, commonly known by its abbreviation INDIA. Analysts believe the BJP reacted to the opposition move, countering it with Bharat.
Personally, I believe that it was, to say the least, mischievous on the part of the opposition to name their alliance India.
It's an acronym. I.N.D.I.A. In fact, it's a rather clever move. But it's equally clever on the part of the BJP to now posit India versus Bharat. Now, this is the kind of tit for tat or electoral ploys usually that happen in democracies as the elections come closer. And probably the electoral strategists in the BJP are now devaluing India in preference to Bharat for this, but even for that we can only speculate.
In the end, a speculated name change motion was not raised during India's special parliamentary session, which concluded in September. And with that, the hullabaloo around India and Bharat has subsided. But what came out of this episode was perhaps some introspection around history, culture, and identity. A timely conversation in a rapidly modernizing India.
My generation is just way, it's actually we've been a long way from the colonial past, as we must have heard the stories, but we've never witnessed it. Also, we can't even think about it because we have so many privileges in our life right now. Like we have internet, we have so many distractions. I don't think so, our generation also thinks about what happened at that time.
I'm not so preoccupied by those colonial memories, honestly. I do read a lot of history. I do check out, I do just take my fair share of time in understanding how our country grew. I know a lot of families had to be split up. A lot of history was erased. A lot of people went through a lot of pain at the same time. But I think it's been 75, 77 years ever since independence. And today we are a very different country. We are growing and we are matching the steps of the Western world, in fact going ahead of them in various spheres. So I think it's high time we shed that colonial image and we take the baton forward.
New India is there. How many know about our forefathers who gave their lives for the freedom of our country? Were there any less? My father went to jail 6 times, 150 lashes on his back, he had a bullet through his leg. Fighting the British, he was a freedom fighter. And there were lakhs and lakhs of these people across the country fighting against the British. So this history is not being taught.
The naming controversy notwithstanding, the young are upbeat about a country that has changed from what it was a few years ago.
I can see that sense of pride coming back in young Indians today. And because I can see the kind of dedication they have in terms of their work culture, the kind of ideas they have, the kind of startups which they are investing in, the kind of products which they are dealing with. Unimaginable things are happening in this country. It's now India who is at the forefront. India is now doing deals with some of the top countries in the world and provide them services. It's not the other way around. We command this position today, and I think this is my sense of pride today. The kind of change which India has been able to bring in the recent times.
In the end, the name change controversy can be understood as political maneuvering ahead of the general elections in 2024. An election where the BJP has the advantage of a well-oiled party machinery and the privileges of incumbency. Though the name change was a false alarm, Will the BJP turn to Hindu nationalism to garner votes? That's a question that may have an answer in the months to come.
BJP is going to be knocked out in 2024. People are sick of their hate propaganda. It has lived its life.
We will see a repeat of Modi's 5 more years in the upcoming election. That is going to give political stability, which is much needed for reforms. It will give further confidence to the ruling establishment to keep pushing reforms and keep unleashing the economic potential of this country.
I feel a proud Bharatiya. I am a proud Aryavartiya. I am a proud Jambudvipa. I am a proud Melua. I am a proud Indian. I always feel there is too much of politics in sports. Only if there was sportsmanship in politics, ours would be a great country.